There's something nobody wants to talk about. Something that lives in the quiet spaces of your exhaustion, in the resentment you feel, but can't quite name in that moment when you help someone for the 100th time and wonder why it feels so wrong. What if your kindness is killing them? I know that sounds harsh, maybe even cruel, but stay with me for a moment, because I'm about to show you something you've sensed your entire life, but couldn't put into words. We've been taught that helping others is always noble, that saying yes makes us good, and saying no makes us selfish. From childhood, we absorbed this message like gospel. Be kind, be giving, be available. And if you hesitate, if you dare to protect your own energy, then something must be broken inside you. But here's what nobody tells you. Some kinds of help aren't acts of love at all. They're acts of interference. They're ways we prevent people from growing while we slowly lose ourselves in the process. You've felt this, haven't you? That strange emptiness after you've given everything and received nothing. That confusion when your help seems to make things worse, not better. That quiet voice asking, "Why am I so tired?" Your weariness isn't weakness. It's wisdom trying to speak. Today we're going to explore something radical. We're going to question the very foundation of what you've been taught about compassion, about responsibility, about love itself. And in that questioning, you're going to discover a truth that will change everything. Real love sometimes looks like letting go. The philosopher understood something profound about the nature of existence. He saw that the universe operates by a principle the ancient Taoists called wu-wei action, through non-interference. The tree doesn't force itself to grow. The river doesn't struggle to flow. Nature has an intelligence that works when we stop trying to control everything. When we constantly rescue people from the consequences of their actions, we're not helping them. We're standing between them and the only teacher that can truly transform them, life itself. Think about it. When you continuously save someone from falling, what happens? They never learn to balance. They never develop the muscles of resilience. They remain dependent, and you become exhausted. This isn't love. This is something else entirely. There's a shadow beneath our compulsion to help. Sometimes we need to be needed. Sometimes we help others to prove our worth, to feel important, to avoid facing our own emptiness. We become addicted to being the savior, because without that role, we don't know who we are. But what if there's another way? What if mature compassion means having the wisdom to know when to step in and when to step back? What if real love means trusting people enough to let them face their own lessons? That's what we're exploring today. Not how to become cold or indifferent, but how to love with our eyes wide open. How to distinguish between someone who's genuinely struggling and someone who's simply stuck in a pattern. How to recognize when our help creates growth and when it creates dependency. Because here's the truth you've always known but couldn't name: not everyone deserves your energy. And that's not cruelty. That's wisdom. Let me show you something. Walk into any forest and observe how nature teaches. A mother bird brings food to her chicks day after day, feeding them tirelessly. But watch what happens when those chicks grow wings. The mother stops feeding. She doesn't gradually reduce portions. She doesn't feel guilty. She simply stops because she knows something we've forgotten. Real love prepares others for independence, not dependence. The bird doesn't feed a chick that refuses to open its mouth. The tree doesn't water another tree. Nature has a wisdom we've lost in our modern complications. It knows when helping becomes hindrance. The ancient wisdom traditions understood this deeply. There's a concept of moving with life's natural current rather than against it. When you try to force outcomes, when you interfere with the natural unfolding of things, you create resistance. You exhaust yourself fighting the river instead of learning to swim with it. Nature trusts its own wisdom. So can you. But we've been conditioned to believe that stepping back is abandonment. That setting boundaries is selfishness. Every time you said yes when you meant no, you sent a message, not just to them, but to yourself. You taught them that your needs don't matter. You taught yourself that your energy is unlimited, that you exist to be consumed. Here's what happens when you continually rescue someone. You rob them of something precious. You rob them of the satisfaction of their own accomplishment. You rob them of the strength that comes from overcoming difficulty. You rob them of the discovery that they are capable. There's a parable about a monkey who sees a fish in the water and thinks it's drowning. So the monkey, being helpful and kind, reaches down and pulls the fish out of the water, placing it safely in a tree. The monkey is proud. The monkey feels noble. And the fish dies. This is what misguided compassion looks like. We help from our understanding of the world, not from understanding what the other actually needs. We project our fears onto their situations. We assume they can't handle what we couldn't handle. And in doing so, we suffocate them with our good intentions. Real compassion is different. Real compassion means recognizing that struggle is often the fire that transforms. That difficulty is the sculptor of character. That some lessons can only be learned through direct experience, and when you prevent those lessons, you prevent growth. So let's talk about the people in your life who drain you, the ones who take and take and take, and no matter how much you give, it's never enough. They exist in patterns, and once you understand these patterns, you'll never unsee them. And that clarity, that's your power returning. There are 6 types of people who will consume everything you offer and remain exactly the same. Not because they're evil, but because they're unconscious. They're stuck in loops of behavior, and your help has become the very thing keeping them trapped. You might recognize yourself in some of these patterns. Good. That recognition is the beginning of freedom, because we cannot heal what we cannot see, and we cannot change what we do not acknowledge. The chronically lazy and the perpetually ungrateful, these are the first 2 faces of unconscious dependency. They've learned that someone will always catch them, that consequences are negotiable, that responsibility is optional. And every time you step in, you confirm their worldview. Understanding these patterns doesn't make you judgmental. It makes you discerning. And discernment is love with eyes wide open. The first type is someone who has abandoned themselves long before you arrived. They're not lacking ability. They're lacking commitment. They've made a choice, perhaps unconsciously, that life is too difficult and someone else should carry their weight. You've seen this person. They have excuses for everything. Their childhood was difficult. Their circumstances are unfair. Their luck is bad. And some of this might be true. But here's the question that matters. What are they doing about it right now? Are they taking any steps, however small, to change their situation? Or are they simply waiting for the next rescuer? There's a deep fear beneath chronic laziness. It's the fear of freedom itself, the terror of choice and responsibility. When you're lazy, you're safe. You can't fail at what you don't attempt. You can't be disappointed by dreams you never pursue. So you stay stuck, and you find people who will enable that stuckness in the name of kindness. When you help someone who refuses to help themselves, you become their life support. They breathe through your effort. They move through your energy. And they never develop their own lungs, their own legs, their own strength. The bird that refuses to open its beak learns an important lesson: no one else can live your life for you. Nature is clear about this. If something doesn't produce, if something doesn't contribute to its own survival, it eventually faces consequences. Not from cruelty, but from the simple mechanics of existence. Let them feel hunger. Real hunger. Not the artificial crisis they create to summon your rescue, but the genuine discomfort of self-responsibility. That hunger is the fire that forges capability. And when you keep feeding them, you keep that fire from doing its work. You're not abandoning them by stepping back. You're believing in them more than they believe in themselves. Then there's the perpetually ungrateful. You could give them everything, and they'd find something to criticize. You pay their rent, they complain about the neighborhood. You buy them a car, they wish it were newer. You sacrifice your own comfort, they take it as their due. Gratitude isn't just politeness, it's a fundamental awareness that we're all connected, that nothing we have is ours by right alone, that every gift is an act of grace we could have been denied. When someone lacks gratitude, they lack this basic understanding of interconnection. They see themselves as the center of a universe that owes them everything. The strange paradox is this: the more you give to an ungrateful person, the less they appreciate it. Your generosity becomes background noise. They recalibrate their expectations around your giving, and soon, what was once extraordinary becomes ordinary, then insufficient, then insulting in its inadequacy. Stop throwing your pearls into a bottomless pit. Your generosity deserves to land on grateful soil. Not because you need their thanks to validate your worth, but because reciprocity is the breath of relationship. When everything flows one way, nothing grows. Now we come to the arrogant and self-righteous. These people don't want your help. They want your validation. They want you to confirm what they already believe, to applaud their choices, to agree with their perspective. And if you dare offer anything else, they reject you entirely. Pride is fear wearing a crown. The arrogant person is terrified of being wrong because their entire identity rests on being right. If they admit ignorance, if they acknowledge need, the self-image they've built begins to crumble. So they defend, they argue, they dismiss, they reject. You cannot enlighten someone who insists they already stand in full light. You cannot teach someone who believes they've already graduated. And when you try, you waste your breath and damage your peace. Even the great teachers knew this. They didn't chase those who walked away. They spoke their truth and moved on, understanding that wisdom cannot be forced on anyone. The arrogant person must fall. They must hit the ground hard enough that they finally look up and realize the sky is vast and they are small. Your wisdom is precious. Don't cast it before those who mock it. Let reality be their teacher. It's more patient and more thorough than you could ever be. Then we encounter the habitually wicked. This is difficult to discuss because we've been taught that everyone deserves compassion, that everyone is redeemable. And perhaps that's true in some ultimate sense. But in the practical realm of your daily life, there are people who have chosen wickedness as their way of being. These aren't people who make mistakes. We all do that. These are people who deliberately harm others, who lie without remorse, who manipulate as naturally as breathing. They know what they're doing. They simply don't care. When you help a wicked person, you become complicit in their wickedness. You provide resources they'll use to cause more harm. You enable their games. You become a supporting actor in their destructive drama. Compassion for the wicked looks different than you think. It means letting them bear the full weight of their choices. It means withdrawing your energy completely so that cause and effect can work without interference. If they drag you onto their path while you're trying to pull them off it, you've helped no one. Protecting yourself from darkness isn't lack of love, it's self-respect. The incurably foolish are perhaps the most frustrating because you can see their potential. You know what they could become if they would just change. But they won't. They repeat the same mistakes over and over, ignoring all advice, touching the hot stove repeatedly, and wondering why their hand is burned. A wise person learns from experience. A fool doesn't. It's that simple. Here's the pattern: crisis, rescue, same behavior. Crisis, rescue, same behavior. An endless loop. And every time you intervene, you prevent the consequence that might finally wake them up. There's a kind of suffering that's legitimate, that teaches, that transforms. And then, there's the suffering people create by refusing to learn. When you try to spare them from the second kind, you trap them in it. The metal that won't face the fire never becomes gold. The fool resists the fire at all costs. So let life be their teacher. It's more persistent than you are. Your exhaustion is proof you've tried enough. Trust life to finish the job. Finally, there's the master manipulator. This is the most dangerous type because they're the hardest to recognize. They don't demand, they make you want to give. They don't take, they make you offer. They understand human nature, and they use that understanding like a weapon. The manipulator knows that good people feel guilty when they say no. They know that kind people want to feel needed. So they craft stories, they play on emotions, they make you feel special for helping them. Before you know it, you're doing things you'd never do for anyone else, and you can't quite explain why. They're shapeshifters. With one person, they're the victim. With another, they're the hero. Their stories change depending on who they're talking to. And if you compare notes with others in their life, nothing quite adds up. They weaponize your goodness. Every generous impulse you have becomes a tool in their hands. And when you finally see through it, when you finally say no, they don't accept it gracefully. They turn on you. They paint you as the villain. They move on to their next target. The moment you stop explaining yourself to a manipulator, you reclaim your power. Silence is the subtlest form of sovereignty. When the energy supply is gone, the whole game collapses. So, what do you do with all this knowledge? How do you apply it without becoming cold, without losing your capacity for genuine compassion? You learn discernment. You learn to distinguish between someone who's temporarily down and someone who's permanently horizontal. You learn to recognize the difference between a hand-up and a free ride. Ask yourself these questions. Are they taking any steps themselves? Do they show gratitude for what they receive? Is this their first crisis or part of a pattern? What happens when I say no? The answers will tell you everything you need to know. Discernment is love with eyes wide open. It's not judgment, it's clarity. It's seeing what is not what you wish were true. And that clarity is the foundation of mature compassion. Here's the paradox that changes everything. Sometimes, not helping is the greatest help you can offer. When you step back, when you let someone face the full weight of their choices, you give them something precious. You give them the opportunity to meet reality, to discover their own strength, to learn what only experience can teach. Ancient wisdom tells us that trying to save the world will only harm it. This isn't pessimism, it's profound respect for the autonomy of other souls. You can point the way, but you cannot walk the path for another person. And when you try, you stumble, and they never learn to navigate. You are not God. You are not the Savior. And accepting that limitation isn't defeat, it's enlightenment. It's the recognition that every person must do their own inner work, must face their own darkness, must find their own light. No external force can do that for them. Only self-awareness saves, and self-awareness cannot be gifted or imposed. So here's how you practice mature compassion. First, observe without intervening. Watch the situation unfold without rushing to fix it. Sit with the discomfort of not acting. This is harder than it sounds because we've been trained to equate action with caring. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Second, wait for commitment. Don't help at the first sign of struggle. Wait until you see them taking steps themselves, however small. When they show up for their own life, then you can support them, but not before. Third, set clear boundaries. Say no as a sacred act. Understand that every boundary you set protects your life force, your energy, your capacity to be truly present. Your no to them is a yes to yourself. Fourth, practice silence with presence. You can be there without fixing. You can witness without rescuing. Your presence itself can be powerful without any action attached to it. Fifth, nourish yourself first. The full cup principle is simple. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. If you don't tend to your own garden, you'll have nothing to share. This isn't selfishness, it's sustainability. Sixth, trust life's curriculum. Consequences are teachers more effective than words ever could be. Life has a way of bringing exactly the lessons each person needs. When you interfere with that process, you disrupt a wisdom far greater than your own. Every no to them is a yes to yourself. Remember that. There's an alchemical process that happens when you withdraw your energy from those who drain you. At first, it feels like death. You feel guilty. You feel cruel. You question everything. This is the black phase, the darkness before transformation. Then comes clarity. You admit to yourself, I cannot save anyone. This isn't failure, it's truth. It's the white phase, the purification, the honest recognition of your limitations. And finally, rebirth. You discover that the energy you were pouring into bottomless pits is now flowing inward, becoming fuel for your own growth. You become like a wise gardener who stops watering dead plants and tends instead to their own garden. This is the red phase, the emergence of mature compassion, wisdom married to love. The energy you've been giving away. It's coming home to you, but you'll feel resistance. The guilt will whisper, what if they really need me? The fear will ask, what if something bad happens? Your whole identity might shake. If I'm not the helper, who am I? Let me reframe these for you. Guilt is ego, not conscience. You're not responsible for their choices, only your own. And you are so much more than your usefulness. You are not a tool to be used. You are a soul with inherent worth, whether you help anyone or not. The person you've been trying to save all along, it was you. You've been drowning while trying to rescue others. Now it's time to swim to shore yourself. Imagine yourself 6 months from now. You wake up and there's no resentment in your chest, no obligation weighing you down, no phone calls you dread, no people you're avoiding because you know they'll ask for something. Instead, there's peace, there's energy, there's clarity about where your help actually matters and where it's wasted. You still care deeply, maybe even more than before, but you care wisely. You've learned to distinguish between fertile soil and stone. You've become like a strong tree that provides shade, but doesn't carry other trees on its branches. Your strength comes from your roots, going deep into your own ground. And from that strength, you naturally offer shelter to those who need it, without depleting yourself in the process. This isn't selfishness. This is the self finally being seen, honored, protected. This is you remembering that you matter too. When you help the right people, you see fruit. When you pour into good soil, you watch things grow. You see gratitude. You see effort. You see transformation. And that's when helping feels like what it's supposed to feel like. Not draining, but nourishing. Not one-sided, but reciprocal. Not obligation, but choice. Mature compassion means loving with wisdom. It means understanding that some people need your presence and others need your absence. It means recognizing that you can care about someone's well-being without being responsible for it. It means moving with life's flow instead of fighting against it. The ancient understanding of letting go isn't about coldness, it's about harmony. It's about aligning yourself with the natural intelligence that runs through everything. When you force, you exhaust yourself. When you allow, you find ease. Sometimes love means letting people fall. And when you understand this deeply, your heart doesn't grow cold. It grows wider, brighter, freer. You no longer help to prove your goodness. You help because you genuinely see an opportunity for growth for both of you. Here's your daily practice. Each morning, ask yourself, who am I trying to save that doesn't want saving? Throughout your day, notice the rescue impulses. Pause. Breathe. In the evening, celebrate the boundaries you held. Weekly review where your energy went and whether it bore any fruit. Every day you practice this, you become more yourself. Not the self that's been conditioned to please and perform and prove, but the self that knows its worth, that trusts its wisdom, that chooses consciously where to plant its seeds. You cannot save anyone. You can only love them. And sometimes, love looks nothing like rescue. Sometimes, love looks like stepping back, like trusting, like letting the universe do what you cannot. When you stop doing other people's lessons for them, you finally begin learning your own. The lesson of freedom, the lesson of wisdom, the lesson of mature compassion. You were never meant to carry the world, just to shine in it. So today, right now, notice who you're trying to save that doesn't want to be saved. Stop. Breathe. Let life do its work. Because in that letting go, you'll discover something extraordinary. You're not losing your capacity to love. You're finally learning what love actually is, and that changes everything. If this resonated with you, share which of the 6 types you recognized in your own life. Leave a comment about the person you're finally ready to stop rescuing. Subscribe to join this community of conscious compassion, and remember, your journey to freedom begins the moment you choose yourself, too.